100 billion sources of hate between your ears. Or the fundamental symmetry of brain computation. Mendaciology is the computational cognitive neuroscience of lies. In it, we can clearly see that there is a scientific symmetry replicated at the scale of neurocomputations. This symmetry provides the basic computation of truth and lies, of love and hate. It is because we are all human and speak our unique natural language that perfectly reveals this symmetry. The importance of symmetries in science is that they enforce what the object of the science must conserve. In physics, for example, a fundamental symmetry is translational symmetry. The same laws of physics operate everywhere in the universe, in every place. The hydrogen you see here on Earth is the hydrogen we see powering our rockets here, the hydrogen in the sun or in a far galaxy. The symmetry we can observe at the level of neurocomputations is similarly repeated innumerably in any living neural system. But in this case, it is a pairing symmetry. For every this unit of brain computation, there is always that unit of brain computation binding a fundamental complementary knowledge function in all neural computation. They are different in content, but not how they compute, and one does not exist without the other. Like the V in the letter W is a pairing symmetry. I have long argued that truth and lies are so fundamental to brain computation that no drug, no surgery can possibly fix our problem with fiat lies. The basic proof of this is in the arguments of Descartes some 400 years ago that began the age of reason we have today. But it is more evident when combined with modern observations in cognitive neuroscience and AI. The human cognitive science is coupled with what you have observed in modern AI modeling systems in your everyday life as deep learning systems. Background articles. If you are new to Mendaciology, here are the key articles in good reading order. First, we have the most amazing universal truth you can observe about lies. This observation also epitomizes the empirical scope of the study of lies as a language neuroscience. In other words, okay, you guys, account for this, or explain how your brain does this. Mendaciology, the study of lies, medium.com. Second, the consequence of this amazing empirical truth is also why it is true that everybody lies to somebody all the time. Nobody, including scientists talking as truthfully as they possibly can avoid lying to someone. Another consequence is that this empirical truth has grave consequences for the future of humanity. It is a good reason to study lies in computational cognitive neuroscience. Fiat lies are genocide on the human race. The Internet Court of Lies. Medium.com. The third article is the explanation of how your brain computes. It also provides further directly observable proofs that anyone can verify from simple natural language study. How your brain computes. It's simple but deceivingly clever. Medium.com. Finally, the fourth article describes the difference between natural language computation and the far more massive multimodal cognitive computations in your brain and neural system. Natural language and your brain. It is everything and nothing much. Medium.com. Summary of those background articles. The fundamental unit of computation, replicated hundreds of billions of times between your ears in a magnificently complex, evolved organization of simple computation units, is seen in predication. You know predication in thousands of ways in natural language predication and predication in logic. It is one word, one idea, one signal, modifying the significance, the context, the framing, the meaning, the truth, falsity, or deceit of another. The basic unit of computation takes a subject of computation and multiple other possible subjects as predication input, and outputs a recognition of familiarity that another recognition unit can use as subject or predicate. In another recognition unit, there are thousands of types of these units in your brain, and the units number in the hundreds of billions, not just one or a few tens of thousands. Neurons in the eye recognize that a light and field of light receptors recognize an edge, and other neurons recognize that every sentence recognizes a subject and predicate, and the context of the sentence recognizes how the sentence episodes knit together in further predications. In 3 or 4 seconds, your living brain computes hundreds of millions of these different recognitions every hour of the day, awake or asleep. We do understand many ways these units of computation physiologically compute, but are still a long way from understanding their full diversity and how they self-organize into how your brain computes. We do understand what such systems can compute. In fact, we know now they can not only compute your perceptions but your motor actions. They can compute the hierarchies of recognitions needed to take the light entering your eye, and ultimately seeing something you know is dangerous or good. We know how the hierarchies of recognitions can perform body actions to pull a trigger on a gun or write a sentence that someone else will understand. And Significantly, we know organizations of such recognitions can do math, invent a new machine, write computer programs, recognize deductive truth, preach to an audience, write fiction, or anything we can observe people learning to do or understand with some difficulty in learning. We do not yet know all details about the different ways neural systems can do these computations. We do know there are many different ways. For example, we know that in your auditory system the signals composing the subjects and predicates are digital codes, and in other neural systems they are analog intensities. We know some neurons take as input specialized chemical changes such as detecting light, and other only take inputs from different types of electrochemical reactions from other neurons. We even know that there is no particular reason to believe these units correspond one-to-one with the neurons we can observe. We do know, however, that the dendrites as inputs and axons as outputs of recognition will often be the right embodiment. We do not know how many of the units of computation can exist in one neuron of a particular type, or require several neurons in a different type of unit. We do know, however, that there is no single right answer, except that the unit is the predication. It can be modeled nicely with what are called advanced perceptrons, as proven by the recent successes in deep learning AI that you have observed. But how do all these units of computation communicate with one another to yield brains that can do what human brains can do? Just as advanced perceptrons have been studied for easily over 50 years of empirical and modeling research, we also know some older principles which are significant in how all these hundreds of billions of units between your ears are organized to function as we can directly observe. The first such, quite old principle is the labeled lines principle. This says that where an input comes from and where an output goes to are labeled lines, meaning the wiring of the brain knows that an input that originated in the eyes, or among some chemically induced emotions, are labeled as such. We know that such labeling can well be much more nature than nurture, more in your DNA than in your learning. Particular recognitions using and providing the predications are both inherited and learned. It is harder to appreciate just how massive but incredibly fast and precise this system of systems of computation units work together to produce recognitions of what we can coherently perceive, think, and do. Included in what we can perceive, think, and do is our uniquely human ability to communicate one brain to another in natural language. Labeled lines are there to be observed in human language. We know if we saw something or heard it, or if we heard something about what we saw, or thought, or did, and we know if we used our hands or our voice to communicate it, or actually do it. Importantly, we already know that advanced perceptrons can do these computations in principle. We also know that conventional computers are very bad, imperfect devices for advanced perceptron computations. For example, conventional computers can make perfect memory and logic machines, but current computers can only, with great difficulty and inefficiency, model systems of brain computation. The opposite is also true. Organizations of units of brain computation can make perfect predication or recognition systems with distributed innate and learned knowledge, speak and understand human natural language, perceive the visual world accurately, behave intelligently in unexpected situations, engage in hate and deception, but only with difficulty reason logically or recall information perfectly. The labeled lines principle is an organizational principle fundamental to all brain computation. That said, it is not a law of conservation that enables us to understand how these units of computation are organized into systems except in a very shallow, surface kind of way. For that law of conservation, like in physics, we need to establish some fundamental symmetries in computation that are maintained by these neural systems, no matter how the lines are labeled. It turns out, we have known this for many years as well, and anyone can confirm the truth of it as well. It is also the root of all truth, and lies at any level in brain computation and human interaction through natural language communication. Mendaciology is a language neuroscience. It is not a physiological or electrochemical neuroscience. It does not have to be one, although the two must complement one another. The fundamental symmetry of brain computation. An interesting symmetry in computational cognitive neuroscience is that every pattern recognizer, every unit of computation is a pattern enactor. In other words, the advanced perceptron is both a pattern recognizer and enactor. Effectively, you wish for something and your body makes it happen as best it can. You perceive something and your body is recognizing it, how your body made it happen, and can figure out how to make it happen again. The fundamental symmetry of neuroscience comes in how these recognizing units pair up. I propose they pair up as test-operate, test-exit, tote controls. The neural system episodically composes hierarchies of recognition components for both test and operate, input, recognition, predication, and output that feeds another recognition predication on the subject. Remember, we are talking about hundreds of millions of these ephemerally organized episodic recognitions in strict hierarchies. We can observe this brain computation operation directly in the grammatical hierarchies in natural language episodes we see as sentences. For every operate or test, the neural system has its opposite, complementary respective test or operate, always available. I propose this as the fundamental conserved symmetry in any neural network. Even if the computation composes something imagined or a lie, that is the symmetry. Episodic perception, thought, and action as ephemeral hierarchies defined in these symmetric tote elements. For every recognition of a predication, this brain organization ensures there are many possible ways to operate on the outcome of a test to achieve the recognition again. The function of the test is to know that in this context, the operate recognition can make the test recognition succeed again. In other words, totes establish a fundamental symmetry among units of neural computation. Totes pair units of brain computation, familiar examples of the symmetry in language and life. To those readers who are familiar with the tradition of stimulus response theory or associationism in psychology, these tote pairings are familiar SR pairings or basic associations between what is perceived and the action needed to obtain that perception. To those who are familiar with neural network computation in AI, they are exemplified in the feed-forward recognition and backpropagation nearly universal to those successful deep learning systems. The exception is that these are occurring at massive scales to reach coherent ephemeral hierarchies of test and operate recognitions out of literally millions of potential networks as candidates for the ephemeral hierarchies, for recognition, thought, and action. The result is that the neural system selects one hierarchy at some moment as what is perceived and one hierarchy as what must be done to achieve the recognition again. This pairing is the familiar need to assign what caused a perception, and that could be a truth or a lie, logic or sheer imagination. In my book on lies, this is the recruitment theory of memory, How to Get Your Lies Back. Amazon.com, How to Get Your Lies Back Audible Audio Edition, Robert Thibodeau, Daniel Greenberg, Privates Publishing. www.amazon.com. Out of millions of possible intermodal perceptions, thoughts, and actions, the singular perceptions, thoughts, and actions are hierarchically recruited to express the cognitive body's decision about what it is attentionally perceiving, thinking, and doing. Memories are not hierarchically organized, except when they are hierarchically recruited to provide coherency to the otherwise incoherent mess of signals that is our neural knowledge. If we see, hear, feel, or think something, we can always imagine why, as how that perception was caused through a second paired recognition. This, I propose, is the fundamental symmetry in computational neuroscience. No neural system in a natural living system is without it. We empirically observe this in our natural spoken language. It is what sentences communicate from one neocortex to another through natural language. You are observing this directly in these very sentences that you are reading right now. Layers of computational unit abstraction. In cognitive science, we commonly recognize a distinction between what are called episodic and semantic memories. Similarly, in structural linguistics, we see what de Saussure termed syntagmatic grammatical adjacency and paradigmatic grammatical sense substitution in sentence formation. The semantic hierarchies are persistent and not ephemeral, and allow you to go up or down abstraction hierarchies of types. A person can be a particular person, an object a particular object, a sport can be a particular type of game, and so on. The computational tote pairings need not be at the same abstraction level for any given pairing to be effective and chosen out of the hundreds of millions possible for a given episodic expression. I can point to a blink of light as a cause for an entire war. Conversely, I might experience a very definite, particular, concrete recognition of breaking my ankle in a fall but associate this with a general cause of black ice on pavement. The fundamental symmetry says our brains always try to, and importantly will, assign recognized cause. Further recognitions may conclude the cause is recognizably not exactly true or exactly true. Yes, I am proposing the fundamental symmetry of neuroscience is the computation of perceived causation between two paired recognitions in tote chains of computation. And here comes hate. The computational point of abstraction is that it permits the brain to compute intermodally and to form ephemeral tote pairings of hierarchies of recognitions. A test can become a hierarchy of totes, and an operate can become a hierarchy of totes. The exit condition is always a decision that something is true for a given predication context, or a deceit for a given predication context. A semantic abstraction that a particular person is the devil can permit an imaginative idea about the cause of what he is doing to be deemed true and recognized as worthy of hatred. The amazing property of natural language in humans is that it both allows the communication of why to hate and also allows the communication of why not to hate. But if a person who is receiving these communications is not engaged in adjusting his tote recognition pairing strengths, the ones in force will remain in force. The bad mental behaviors will persist. Everybody lies all the time to someone. Hate can come out of what someone else thinks is nothing worth mentioning, but it can be corrected through willing but structured and forced dialogue between individuals who share how they hierarchicalize and de-hierarchicalize their knowledge in natural language communications among one another. The test de-hierarchicalizes into knowledge, and the operate hierarchicalizes from knowledge into communication. But the knowledge chosen for the hierarchical communications depends on how true a particular pairing of recognitions is deemed to be actually true or deceitful imagination. It is only in understanding how even 1 trillion variables in an AI neural network systems may be far too few to capture the dynamics and now, with the fundamental symmetry, the kinetics of human brain computation. Between your ears are billions of computation units recruited by the millions for understanding or saying a single sentence, and believing or not, that something deserves your hatred or your appreciation.